All right, welcome back to Streaming Rainbow, everybody, and to the second part of our series here of interviews with the creator of Oceania 2084, which is the phenomenal game that we have as the game engine for our actual play of the same name. That if it's not up by the time this is up, will be up soon thereafter. So go back and check out the first part if you want to see a little bit more of the foundation of the discussion that we're going to be having in this part. In this part, we're going to focus largely on world building and intent, since we do have the person whose intentions undergird this entire thing. So I am Danny Mendoza, he, him, super happy to be here in conversation. Johan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Johan Eriksson, he, him, game designer by vocation and trade and passion. Also game teacher, games educator since 20 years back. Also political activist. That's as much as I'm going to give you.
Love that. That is perfect. And to follow up on something from the first part, which again I will encourage everyone to check out if you'd like. In the first part, there was a moment where I was going to, and then we went in a different direction, get into questions of play to lift. So you were talking about how a lot of the directionality at the table is determined by the collective, right? And specifically not determined by the character playing Big Brother, who people coming from a more traditional, let's say D&D framed background of TTRPGs might be mistaken for thinking that Big Brother is a GM. Big Brother is not a GM. It is a different class of player character that is playing essentially a different game to some degree, right? As the rest of the table, or at least has different game functions within an overlapping game. If it's a game of games, the game that Big Brother plays, as you were mentioning in the last video, takes a lot more from board games, which we'll get into more in the Big Brother focused video. And the rest of the players playing resistance characters have different incentives and different opportunities, including opportunities to help each other on board when they come in, as they're going to do in this campaign that we're going to be running here on this channel, wherein they are... The players that are involved are 14 in number. We can only have 3 to 8 players at the table at a time for this particular game, by design, for reasons that have to do with the game design. If we had 9 players instead of 8, the economy for Big Brother specifically wouldn't work as designed, right? So we're going to be switching people off. As people switch off, they are going to need to onboard onto the process, picking up the baton essentially from the other players at the table, playing their player character who will have already had things established about them in prior sessions, without them playing them, taking them over for the time that they play them. And then if they leave and their player character is still around, they will continue to be played as a trusted character, that form of NPC that the resistance characters play, in future sessions. To facilitate that in a different context, if I were the facilitator of the game, as I often am in these situations, I would follow a LARP, to use a term from LARP that I encountered in that context. I tend to play to lift. What this means a lot is I move spotlight around a lot, right? So to help make sure that everybody is engaged at the table, and to help make sure that folks are having, even quieter folks, more what we would call introverted folks or what have you, have an opportunity to engage in the story in meaningful ways without having to take on the pressure, the social pressure of taking spotlight. I would often take a facilitator role and use it to share spotlight, to close out something that is happening with a very enthusiastic player, and then move to somebody else who may be no less enthusiastic but has a different demeanor, right? And help them bring that out. Same thing with the onboarding in that situation. I would often bring in a spotlight on that player character as they come in. You gave the example in D&D of like somebody coming in to save the day on a fight, but it doesn't even have to be that. It can just be, hey, we're starting off, it's the afternoon, where are you in your day? What's happening? Blah, 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 right? And we can play to find out still with that. But I'm not the facilitator here, right? Like, I'm playing Big Brother. So my question, and this is partially like to give you context and give the audience context, audience context for stuff related to this game, you context for how I approach these things a lot of the time. Joining those two things together to help me guide my players well, right? Because even though they're not my players from a Big Brother perspective, this is an actual play. I'm the one who invited them to the table, so I'm gathering them up. I do feel a certain amount of administrative responsibility outside of gameplay to help them be prepared to play. So how would you recommend we approach those kinds of questions, encouraging the table to play to lift and move spotlight around amongst each other when I can't do that at all?
Great question, but I want to counter-argue. If you look at all the Big Brother zero cost reactions, they are all spotlight shifting things, essentially.
Beautiful.
So all the things that are in the toolbox for Big Brother without a cost attached to it, the things that Big Brother can do at any time, is basically interjecting small details into the scene that Big Brother is listening to. So I didn't want to strip the player who's playing Big Brother of all of these tools, but I wanted to democratize those tools so that everyone has a share of them. So when the game hits that sweet spot, what it turns into is everyone is tending to that around the whole table. And that's when you really get a feeling of like you're like a player community, and you're all caring for this storytelling that you're doing together. That's what the system is meant to do for you. So one part of that is, let's say, it's also like ingrained in another design part, which is the way that the day cycle is set up. And specifically the first session in a campaign tends to be every resistance character finds themselves in the morning phase. Morning phase is essentially in their home, not with the other players. And you take turns around the table describing that morning for your character. So you already get everyone into the spotlight for like a round, like a conversation round where you're just like sharing what's happening. And mechanically in the morning phase, Big Brother has to inject something into each one of those scenes. It's by rule. So you get like a rehearsal space for how to share space with each other in that first like half an hour of the game. After that, you're completely free to kind of break it up or shift, or like maybe someone's not going to work. Maybe they're going to that other friend's place, and suddenly you have a different way of approaching these phases, because there's nothing that's dictating what you actually do in the phases when you get down to it. They're more like a time unit thing.
Because there's only so many acts you can take in a phase, and each act has to be 10 minutes of in-story time.
Exactly. And so for the first session in a new campaign, it tends to work as like a tutorial, and it's meant to be that. It's also where I mentioned in the last episode that it's where you feel a bit awkward because you're explaining a slice of life of a character who you're new to. You are doing the first small steps of imagining this character. So it's a slow ramp of onboarding. And if we're getting back to the highlighting or spotlighting characters, as that starts to become ingrained that, wait, I'm just describing the life of my character. You start bringing in characters that you have that are, for example, a family member. And then the rules dictate that it's another player who has to play against you with this NPC. So it's like on an engine level, it does become engaging in that way, where everyone kind of shifts the spotlight around a lot, in a sense.
Two questions based on that. Thank you so much for that. And absolutely, I really appreciate that, because what it is, and I think what I was saying before was more about a tendency to, this is still me being a little bit like Western pilled, and like, I want to play the game right, right? Where like, I want to lean out of things that make Big Brother feel like Big Brother is the GM. But I am grateful that you put in at a design level the ability and also like a place to play, right? Because I am a player at the table, and I am a part of the community that's telling this story. I just have fewer, like, I think the point you made about it being democratized is the perfect way to contextualize it. I have two questions. One that has to do with something you just mentioned, which was the sharing of trusted characters, the playing it, right? Which I'll get to in a moment, with regard to the concept of character non-monogamy, because I want to know what your opinion might be when it comes to that. But then the other, and that's to borrow a phrase that I at least was introduced to by Sam Dunewald of Dice Exploder. I don't know if Sam came up with it or if it's a concept somebody else came up with. But that's specifically, I have a transcript in front of me that I'm looking at as a reference here from Dice Exploder of an episode going into character non-monogamy. So I want to give credit for the use of the term. But I also want to ask, specifically in the case of the game that I'm going to be running, there is something that I know is going to come up that will come up for a lot of people at home, which is sometimes some people are going to arrive like 30 minutes later than everybody else, right? Because they're running home from work. So in a highly structured environment where there are 6 phases in the day and there are so many acts in a phase and whatnot, what is your design intent and what would you recommend, right? Because those may be the same thing, they may be different things. When it comes to accounting for that, let's say that you can't wait the 30 minutes for somebody to show up. Do they just join into whatever phase they're in and their character missed the earlier stuff? Was it done for somebody else? Do they go back and do that real quick? And then what's the idea?
I wouldn't retcon and do like flashback scenes. I would just have them join at the point that everyone else is. It would mean like everyone stopping play for 2 seconds and being like, hey, just so you know, we're doing this and this and this, and this is what's going on, and you wouldn't believe it, but this character over here did this thing, and we think it's a thought police agent or whatever, right? So they need to get like brought up to speed, but it's not like it is. I've said this several times already in this session, this in part, that it's slice of life playing for the most part. It's very seldomly like amping up to be full on action movie. I have had sessions that feel full on action movie, definitely, but it's seldom. Most of the time we are playing things as the hushed down conversation in cafeteria line, the silent gazing out over the horizon at the dock in the bay, like things that are more easy to just step into, if that makes sense. Sure. And also the thing is, it's not a party game, and what I mean by this is you don't have an adventuring party for the most part. There are individuals who are doing things in their everyday life, and sometimes they meet up, but there is no demand on them meeting up. There's no demand on them doing a quest, right? There are no quests. So so there's like little need for everyone being in on every scene. It's even like I've had sessions where I've had someone for the first two phases, I'm just going to listen because I'm in a bad place today, right? That's fine.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
That's great.
The slightest, even. So that's the way I would actually deal with it. It's like in a sense, it's a little bit more relaxed around, because this is one important thing. In all the phases, there are specific free acts that end your turn.
Okay.
That ends your phase, right? So if you're in a work phase and you say, well, I think I'm just going to work, that ends your phase. You're out of the...
Yeah, you don't have to do your, you don't have to do your allocated number of acts. You can do, and I think that's an important point to make, right? Because this is where part of that question comes from, right? Is from a facilitation perspective, a sense of, I want everybody to have, I don't want to punish people for being 30 minutes late, right? Essentially. So I don't want them to lose out on the chance at like character development and story and things like that, even if they're not part of it. But by the same token, this is not a resource accumulation. I mean, it is for me as Big Brother, but like for everybody else, it's not a resource accumulation game by design. It's supposed to not be. That's part of the point, right? So in the same way, like you don't, I want to find ways to make it clear to the other players at the table that there should not be pressure felt to, I have to do 3 acts or 6 acts or whatever the maximum like value of acts is per session, whatever feels right to my character. I have an allocation from the time management standpoint of a maximum of this number of acts before I go off and just do like I do whatever I need to do to close the phase, right, for myself. So I think that's a really important point that you brought up, that you can just decide, this is me right now. I'm just going to go to work. I don't need to do any of the rest of it today.
I have an anecdote from a play session I was in, where there was one character, or rather I should say there was one player who felt like, okay, so whatever I do, I get punished. I'm going to try to just be the most law-abiding citizen in the world. And just goes on to do everything that's expected from the point of Big Brother for as long as like, and then after a little while, like, I get it now. This is a horrible experience. I don't want to do this.
Why would you choose to do that? Right? It's great that the system design reinforces that. I think that's so important, you know? I think that's...
And he still got punished because he's still doing shit. Right. He's still just...
Well, but that's part of the system design also, and the reflection of what it means to live under an autocratic system, right? Like under the auspices of authoritarianism, that you can do everything, right? You can be a full bootlicking like member of the party or whatever, or the conglomerate, a bureaucracy in this case, right? And you still will be punished in the end. Not can be, will be, like definitively, because the very existence of the punishing mechanism is what makes that a when and not an if, not your behavior individually, right?
Here's an implied thing, and this is hidden for everyone. I've never talked about this in any interviews. I've not like expressed this in words even. I just know it. So there is an implied thing in the system. Since all strangers can be transformed into trusted characters, they are all having deviations. Every character in the whole world has a deviation. Because they're never going to fit in, because they can always become the resistance character. So
I love that. That's such a hopeful design idea. I love that so much. That really helps me too as the architect of the strangers, right? In this particular case. Man, that is such a good, because it feels so right. You're right. It's not like explicit in the text, but it feels as though it is now that you say it. Right? Because of course, it's inherent to the design. How could they possibly be a trusted character if they can't be a resistance character? And how could they be a resistance character if they don't have a deviation? That's so clean. Also, I gotta say, as somebody very new to this art form, super impressed by that. That's a really cool idea. I had to fan out for that a second because I really like that. Okay, so speaking of things I really like, and speaking of trusted characters, right? Character non-monogamy. So explain to the folks at home, please, who may not have read the text yet or picked it up. what your intent is with the character non-monogamy here, specifically as it relates to Big Brother playing the stranger characters, the resistance characters, players playing trusted characters, and also as a subdivision of that, do you intend for them to have consistent ownership over specific trusted characters, or is it fully non-monogamous? Anybody who wants to pick it up any moment can just pick it up, play with the doll.
Yeah, anyone who feels like playing that character can volunteer to play the character and should do so. That's the design intent. There is no designation, Jake always plays my sister. There is no such thing. Intentionally so. I think it's important that everyone... So, here's the... so resistance character. Let's take one resistance character and their closest network, excluding all the other resistance characters, and just look at that slice of the game system. As the resistance player playing that resistance character, you imagine or you create the name, the placeholder for the trusted characters that you have around you. Those trusted characters are essentially, using computer game lingo, your extra lives, right? On the event of your current resistance character dying, you will take one of your trusted characters, and that's now your new resistance character. Right? You never get to define the characters that you might end up playing. That is the work of everyone you're playing with, besides Big Brother. So you don't have ownership of your future reincarnations, if we call it something like lazily, like your future lives. They are a communal effort to put them in your hand. So this is intended to, at the gaming table, foster a feeling of responsibility towards each other. Because if I take your sister and start role-playing that sister in a way that I know you're never going to want to play them, I'm destroying your future.
Yeah.
And so we're now talking about a layer of design ideas that's not apparent in the rulebook, that's not apparent in the way I describe the rules. These are the thoughts I had shaping them. And so what it comes down to is I'm socially engineering the table through these rules to behave in certain ways and understand certain things.
I love that. Can we talk for a second, if you're open to this? In the prior episode, we talked in somewhat positive terms at one moment about the term propaganda. And now we're talking a little bit about social engineering. And both of those things in a lot of real world contexts carry a lot of negative connotations. But they are ultimately instruments, right? And can be instruments in favor of anything, including things that any of us and anybody watching this might find aligns with their values and their ethics, and could be theoretically approached in ways that arguably could be ethical. So my question is, as a game designer, and you're specifically setting up systems and structures with exact intent, I don't know if you can be a game designer without social engineering, right? Like that seems to be kind of bedrock to
Don't think so.
The thing. I don't think that you can be, what I know a little bit more about is storytelling. I don't think you can be a storyteller without being a propagandist, right? Because I think that anything that is seeks to be persuasive and has any kind of worldview is inherently propagandistic. So my question to you is then, from an ethical perspective, how do you approach these things in your work? And if you could speak to them a little bit, specifically as they relate to Oceania 2084.
Sure. So let's start with the heavy part first. Oceania could have been a really heavy-handed, prescriptive worldview, pushed upon players. It's not, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm allowing each table to define their own oppression, their own world building, their own character, the way that things work in the world. It's all up to the table playing. So I'm not dictating anything around how you're like, I'm not saying anything specific around how your oppression at your table is going to look at, or like what things that will cause Big Brother to strike down, or things like that. I've tried to the best of my abilities to keep my hands out of that, because I need the game, the system, to model more general oppressive systems. I've needed the game to ring true, whether you live in social democracy Sweden, or capitalist America, or a communist China, right? Because what is oppression? It's using the same tools to keep people under the boot. Why? And the specific themes or topics that is involved in that shifts all the time. I've tried to make a game that systematizes and simulates a more general vibe to oppression, so that it's more wide in a sense. And the ethics of this, why I don't call it a propaganda game, is because propaganda is prescriptive. It has a specific bad guy. It has a specific worldview that has to be pushed onto the person receiving the propaganda. Right. It does so in the extent that I am defining authoritarianism for you.
Sure.
But that is not really a debated question.
No.
If that makes sense.
It's about as close to objective as you get, especially in discussions of politics, right? Because the question of who has authority, how does authority function, it doesn't even necessarily judge authoritarianism to define it. It just defines it. Yeah.
Exactly. And the same goes for Oceania. It defines how it works, but it doesn't really say anything else. And so that's the way I keep out of that ethics conundrum, if that makes sense.
Well, I will say for us, it's going to be a little dicier, because we are going to be propagandistic in the sense that we are going to, in playing the game, we are going to decide what the oppressions are, right?
Yes.
And then we are going to be bringing our collective life experiences and intent in messy and partial ways and overlap and what have you through to the game. So I will say overtly, I'm not walking in with any kind of agenda for like, this is what oppression is going to be in the world. I'm infinitely more interested in what the table finds the oppression to be than what I might find the oppression to be individually. And I know that this is built, and thank you for that, in a way where everybody's idea of what the oppression is gets to live in conversation with each other, which I think is lovely and wonderful. But that still will coalesce into a newly formed group worldview for the duration of this actual play, and that will evolve the way it needs to through gameplay, which will also be interesting to watch and be a part of unfolding. I'm very excited about that. And then the consumption of the engagement with by the audience who's watching this right now of what we do will be an experience, arguably in some sense, of propaganda, but it will be of a propaganda derived very differently than propaganda is very often derived, because it is not in service of like a single mandated mission. It's not in order to propagandize to convince people to follow this party or believe in this political ideology or buy this product, right? It's an experience of an amalgamation, because it's a democratized process of determining what the oppression is. It is an experience of the amalgamation of the amalgamated propaganda of a community that is democratically derived through the exercising of communal storytelling, which I think is fascinating as an idea, because I don't know that I've experienced that much, if at all, elsewhere.
Yeah. So that is very inspired by Theater of the Oppressed. I don't remember the authors.
Augusto Boal.
Yeah, thank you, Boal. Exactly. It's very inspired by that, and it's also good to think about that, because I agree. Every table that plays the game, even if it's not an actual play, turns this system into their own personal propaganda, where everyone around the table kind of agrees, which is an interesting mechanism to have at the table. But like, there is no way for me as the game designer to know what that ends up in. I've actually been thinking about this, that in a sense, and this is one part that I'm self-conscious about and not really 100% sure I like. And so this is full disclosure. It feels like you're creating a temporary, small echo chamber.
Sure.
And if you're playing it in a certain way, with like bleed in to the game, where you're actually bringing your concerns into this game world,
sure,
it runs the risk of becoming like identity confirming, in a sense that could be troublesome if you do it too much.
100%. I mean, to speak frankly about it from my perspective, feel free to weigh in on this as much as well as you'd like. But like, theoretically, with a relatively agnostic engine like this, a bunch of folks who, to use US terms, are MAGA, could pick this up, put their own impressions of what oppression is into it, and create an echo chamber. So it doesn't necessarily even reflect your own leftist politics, right? Like, in an inherent way. So to your point, that creation of an echo chamber could be less than ideal. Question when it comes to that, two-part question kind of. One is how much room is there, do you believe, either deliberately or just reflecting upon it, deliberately by design on the front end or reflecting upon it now that I'm asking, or in the back end now that it's out, how much room is there for competing ideas of what is oppressive in this environment to exist as expressed by different members of the party? So I'm talking about things that could be relatively diametrically opposed, or that would be a little bit harder. I'm a big believer in like multiple things can be true at once, so I don't have any trouble from a storytelling perspective reconciling these things. But my question is it built to do that? Like, is part of the design intent there, or do you think it works well if it wasn't intended on the front end, to have one person think that the oppression is very much this, and the other to think it's something that seems to be somewhat its opposite?
So oppression in this game, when I designed it, I was thinking about post-truth society.
Right.
So sure, I didn't even put anything in terms of rules to safeguard against contradictory deviations, for example. It does turn it into a tricky navigation. I don't know if you've read a book called The City and the City.
I have it on my list. I'm dying to read it.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. Yeah.
It has this fascinating world building where basically one city is superimposed on top of another in terms of borders. So one street is in one city and the neighboring street is in another city, and never shall the two meet. Like, if you see something going on in this street where you're not a citizen, you're not allowed to act on that. You're not allowed to even acknowledge it. And so it's like this thing. It's very contradictory in its composition. I actually read this book while making Oceania. So I think it actually had a lot of impact on that part, because it does bring in this. The complexity is not bad. It can only bring more nuance or more interesting builds of the narrative, etc. So
I love that so much. My secondary question is, what, if any, relation, like, how does Big Brother engage with that gameplay, I guess is what I'm getting at. Meaning, when you for the folks watching at home, when you get all of these distinct deviations from all the resistance characters, right? And obviously, to the point that you just made, one thing that might not be explicit in the text but is very clearly a part of the game is in the construction of strangers, whatever deviations they have while they're strangers, that's the Big Brother character's decision what the deviation is, right? So that's definitely a way to directly inject that. Other than that, what are the other ways that Big Brother can potentially engage with, the construction of this particular dystopia for this group of people at this table, and then past that, what responsibilities exist for Big Brother versus the resistance characters to perpetuate or like flesh out the elements of that dystopia that are therefore established?
So let's begin with the specific deviations. So when you're setting up a campaign or like starting out, session 0. Okay, so the deviations when you're setting up a campaign are generated in character creation of the resistance characters. So as Big Brother, you're sitting there listening to all the discussions around what they mean by these different deviations, etc., and ask clarification questions. And like, you have to really understand what they're aiming for. Like, if someone writes, "I like ice cream," as their deviation, you need to understand it. Do you mean all ice cream? Does it include gelato? Right? So you really have to like
all flavors
understand.
of ice cream. What do you like about the ice cream? What is it that 100%.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Because when you're as Big Brother, you're reformulating these deviations into the rules of thought crime. Those rules are never reflected back to the characters or the other players. You just write them up. The way you formulate is important for you, not for them. They don't know exactly how you formulate it. They just know that whatever they wrote in their character sheet, that's a thought crime. So for you as the Big Brother player, it's kind of open for you to make these rules that you're creating based on those, so that it encapsulates the thing that they write, in a sense.
And always attending. So here's the interesting nuance there, right? Because I'd love to zero in a little bit on that, because what I'm hearing and a bit of where my thinking is also filling in some stuff is, if I'm following correctly, so it starts with the players. You want to understand intent as clearly as possible. There's something I do in session zeros consistently, which is I bring up what I call the penguin problem, which is I call it that because I read a study in Scientific American once that was a linguistic. It was an article about a study that was a linguistic study wherein people were brought in to define a penguin. Like the concept of a penguin, what constitutes a penguin. And people, the way it was presented in the article, the idea is, everybody thought they knew what a penguin was. We all know what a penguin is. We've all seen a penguin. That's a penguin, right? Yeah. But when they drilled down and dealt with a lot of dichotomies to help define this, so that was the methodology they seemed to use more or less. So like, is a penguin heavy or light? Is it wet or dry? Is it, goofy or elegant, et cetera, et cetera? There was about a 12% average overlap in defining a penguin among the participants. It's staggeringly low, which I use as a way of informally, and I don't know much about the methodologies involved in this or how replicable it all is, but it communicates for me in these session zeros a truth of my lived experience, at least, which is that language is an imperfect tool for communication, however brilliant and incredible it may be, however much it might be one of the primary geniuses of human existence, right? That allows us to at least attempt to connect with each other intellectually, and my mind will never fully touch yours, right? With the fullness of my lived experience and the fullness of yours being impossible for either of us to perceive, I can't ever say anything and then have you receive it exactly the same way, right? But we can try to get closer, right? And that's the penguin problem. So when we talk about safety tools, which we'll talk about more for this game a little bit later, we talk about, like, we use things like lines and veils a lot of the time, or we use the palette grid. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It essentially puts on an XY axis from safe to unsafe or dangerous, and then from like exciting to boring, right? The same ideas that are in a Lines and Veils document. And for those watching who may not know a Lines and Veils document, you pick certain topics that are a line you don't cross and they don't exist in the game. More or less, that's how it's classically been used. A veil, it can exist in the game, but it's not something that gets a lot of focus in session. And then there's lots of more granular ways to break things out. Like, I'm okay with it happening in session, but don't have it happen to my character. Or it can happen in session, but don't describe it in a lot of detail, or don't describe this detail, don't get into this part of it, all that sort of stuff. It becomes really important because one of the topics that often comes up is like harm to children, for example. Well, how are we defining children, and what is harm? Like, how do we define harm, right? Those things matter. So to your point, when it comes to the deviations, it matters if it's gelato. It matters if it's pistachio gelato. If it matters if it's pistachio gelato that you love because it reminds you of your father and a time that you were taken to go have pistachio gelato when you were 8 years old that you felt freer than you have any day since, right? Like, the more of that I know as Big Brother, also the more that I know, and this speaks to another thing I get into in session zeros, which is what you water grows, the more I know about what is going to hurt your character, right? And my job as Big Brother isn't necessarily like cruelly above table. I'm a big believer, especially with like antagonistic dynamics at the level of the fiction. It's even more important that everybody is on the same page and collaborating above table, right? I liken it to professional wrestling, where like the heel and the baby face, I don't know if you know the parlance of professional wrestling, but basically the bad guy and the good guy, right? Are, it's a choreography, right? I apologize, everyone, spoilers watching this, professional wrestling is choreographed. But when you're doing that incredibly complex, often athletically quite difficult choreography, a lot of times it's harder for the person losing than the person winning the match because of the way that you have to make those moves. And you have to do a lot to make the other person look good, whatever look good means in both like cases, right? Or more than one, if there's more than two people involved, how many cases there may be. I believe the healthiest way to approach this kind of thing at the table, where there are antagonistic things, and there are antagonistic elements in this game, right? Not just between Big Brother and Resistance characters, but Resistance characters are going to be under pressure, especially in situations like interrogations, to sell each other out, right? And not just other trusted characters. They could sell another Resistance character out fully, right? Like, nothing's stopping them. So. So yes, Big Brother is the Big Brother player is the obvious avatar of antagonism in this game, but because of the panopticon, the authoritarian environment, the inherent pressures enacted by the system overall, not just through or for or like from Big Brother as a player, everybody has some of that. So this is a game where like I am marking for my players here that PvP, which I don't love that term because I think of it more as character versus character, not player versus player for the reasons I just mentioned. But character versus character is intrinsic to the game, as is character death. Intrinsic. So like if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's reasonable. This isn't the game for you, right? I would love to hear more about your thoughts on design decisions and intent when it comes to those dimensions of the game, how they interact with safety, how they model what you want about the world, anything you'd want to share about it.
Two different things comes to mind. One is this, we talked earlier, I don't remember if it was this session or the previous session, about the scenario where someone killed someone and then they realize they have to live with the consequences of that, right? That type of responsibility, I think, is needed when you create new characters into this world also. For example, if you have a line, we don't want to see harm to kids. Everyone around the table has to understand that if you introduce a character that is a kid, harm is going to happen to that character. That's just the nature of the game. So it's when I've said before that this is an adult game, that's really what I mean. It's about agency, responsibility, and shared world inhabitation to an extent that many games don't do this. Meaning that every player around the table are responsible for everything at the table. And that can be a tricky thing to understand at first. But I think the crew that plays this game as a staple in their gaming group is going to get really good at understanding how your actions affect other people's experience, because you have to include that. And I will
say, yep, go ahead, finish.
I also want to just
no, I was gonna say, sorry. Mine is very, very quick, and it's just me complimenting you. So I want to do that real fast, and then you can...
Yeah, perfect.
I really, in the context of what you just said, I not only want anybody watching this video, please go play this game. I kind of like the idea of this game being an onboarding tool to playing other games with other people. Or if not exactly that, something that I would hope that I get to play with all of my regular collaborators, even the ones who aren't in this campaign that I'm going to be running now, because I want to learn more about how to do that better than I already do it, based on what you just said. And I can already clearly envision how the engine of this game will give me an opportunity to flex that muscle, to work it out, to build it out further. And I want everybody else I play with to do that too. Yeah. And then take those lessons to other games, right? Yeah. Not to mention the rest of our lives, right? But anyway, I wanted to share that.
For sure.
Please, you were going to make a point.
I want to tie that to, because I've always considered the deviations to be a built-in safety tool. Like, when I'm creating my deviation as a resistance player, I'm basically defining what type of things that will be punished in the system. Meaning that I have to actually consciously sit with that for a bit when I'm doing character creation. Like, do I really want to play a game where cross-dressing is a deviation? Or is that something I don't want to experience in this prolonged campaign, right? That really is a thing. You have to be conscious about like what you're bringing into the world. And I think you asked me earlier, like if there's like a common theme in the games I make. That is that common theme. Everything I make puts highlight on we are all responsible for what we bring into the table. That's really at the core of my design philosophy, if that makes sense. So personally,
I love that.
Personally, for this game, when I play it, I don't personally use traditional safety tools. I don't use X cards. I don't use lines and veils. I, however, in session 0, have a really like deep dive into a conversation that just tries to understand, like, where are we coming at this from? What do we want to experience? And have that more like a conversation instead. Because I think for me, in this specific game, it's easier.
So for what it's worth, we're going to have, hi everybody, I don't think you're going to watch this before we do this, but you know this already, cast members, because I've told you, we're going to have like a 3 or 4 hour conversation. At this point in this interview process, like this conversation we've been having, I think I like to think of it more like that than an interview. I don't think that's going to surprise you to find that I'm chatty enough to like get into these safety discussions for 3 or 4 hours with, 14 other people or 13 other people. But so what I have typically done in other games, right, which is the only reason why we might still use some of these here, is I don't personally find lines and veils to be a useful safety tool as an end. I find it to be a comfortable place for a lot of people to begin, right? But then we use that to unpack conversation, and then that is what actually means something, right? Because if we just, out of an abundance of caution, right, go in and go for like, oh, lines and veils, let's do that. Well, then anybody who doesn't want to feel like a bad person is going to take every form of bigotry on there and be like, everything's a line, right? That happens all the time. Where people are like, all these things are a line, except this is what happens. I'm among other parts of myself, I'm a member of the queer community, right? Like I'm a bisexual, pansexual person. And yeah, thank you. And so I could look at that and see that somebody's put something on homophobia, right? As a red line. But then if I want to play a character who has my same exact sexuality and I want to bring in parts of my lived experience in a world that's homophobic. Not everybody in this world is homophobic, but the world is homophobic, right? Then what am I going to do? You know what I mean? Like I would experience like without that person intending to, I would experience harm through erasure, because there would be erasure of my lived experience in that. So I always break, even if I'm just using lines and veils, I always break it open in conversation. I'm like, look, for all these forms of bigotry that are on this list, anything we're adding there, we got to dig in, right? And be like, okay, my friend helped me articulate it really, really well, because she's a disability advocate in the space, like in the actual play space. And the way that she puts it oftentimes is like, she wants to make sure nobody is ableist at the table, above table, super fair. Even at the level of the characters, for a lot of the games we play, this would be harder in a game like Oceania, but for a lot of the games we play, I'll give the example of like in Eat the Reich. Eat the Reich from Roanoke and Deckard, right? You play vampires who are coming in to kill Nazis and literally drink Hitler's blood. So there's actual Hitler there in a fake 1943 Paris, right, up in a Zeppelin above the Eiffel Tower. It's amazing. I love it. It's a blast. But the reality is, you do not need to do Roman salutes and say slurs and whatever for people to get that they're Nazis, right? That they're literal like 1940s Nazis, and that is something I carry over to a lot of other things that overlaps with what Mary articulates so well. Hi, Mary, if you're watching this. It's okay for me to talk about it when she's not here, because she talks about it all the time publicly, and I want to amplify the great work she is doing in this space. She talks about how my understanding of it is no ableism above table. At the level of the fiction, a lot of times she'll be careful with other people displaying ableist behaviors or attitudes. Not that cannot ever happen, but that is in the axes presented by the palette grid, that would go under exciting dangerous, right? Somewhere in there, or exciting unsafe. I prefer dangerous to unsafe, because I feel like unsafe is more judgmental. But like let's say exciting dangerous, where? And then let's split that open further, and like what is okay and what is not, and what's going to. Because at the end of the day, the real people at the table matter more than the rest of what we're doing here, right? But at the level of environmental design, if she always plays characters who have some form of disability. Oftentimes it'll be characters in a wheelchair, characters with crutches, sometimes characters that have the same stuff that she has in real life, that sort of thing. I'm erasing that if she's in a wheelchair and there are no stairs in the world, right? Like if there's nothing to push against, it cannot, then basically the decision is cosmetic at best. It doesn't exist in reality. So in this game, right, that's how we're planning on approaching this game, for whatever that's worth, and using the deviations as a function. I will say it reminds me a little bit of another game that I ran recently, called Misspent Youth, where I don't know how familiar you are with Misspent Youth, but the table comes up with the forms of oppression there as well, not from the deviations, not in the same way you're doing it here, but essentially like as a table together, we come up with the elements of the oppression that are then tools for me as the authority in that game, what they call the GM in that game, to utilize, right? I find that game to be very compelling and interesting for reasons that may not surprise you, given our conversation. But I love that it's going to be that's going to be coming from them. I just want to use tools that are like scaffolding that people are used to, as a way to
onboard that makes sense
into the rest of these
course.
conversations. And my question to you is, when you were putting this together, we'll talk a little bit more about safety stuff a little later, but when you were putting this together, what was it like thinking of the game design from that perspective, experientially for yourself, and how do you feel like that experience informed your ultimate decisions about how you made the game function structurally?
Full disclosure, I thought nothing about safety. When I was writing,
I think that's fair.
When I was writing the game, I thought nothing about safety because I didn't want to get hindered by human sensibilities when describing oppression. And that's the horrible truth.
Sure. Yeah.
Everything in the book that has to do with different safety aspects is an after construction to make it playable without becoming harmful. That's it. The thing I mentioned about the deviations being part of the safety system of the game is I wrote it before I had that thought, but when I had that thought, I emphasized it, if that makes sense. So
absolutely. I think that subconscious levels of our thinking don't get enough attention, right? I'm a big believer in attending to one's instincts, what we call like gut level thinking, partially when it comes to safety in real life, right? Like there have been a lot of situations, without getting into details, right? But like a lot of situations in my real life, like in anybody's, where I have been in an uncomfortable to dangerous moment, right? And typically my gut is sounding an alarm. And where it's really problematic is when I have socialized myself into a decision that goes against my gut. I've never listened to my gut and been like, shucks, I messed that one up. Right? Like
I recognize that.
There's something about the human mind. Yeah, something about us goes faster than the speed of conscious thought. And giving ourselves room to catch up to that is helpful. And I think that's true in art also. So I do think you deserve credit for designing that safety deliberately, even if you recognized it after the fact. I think in that sort of context. And I think also recognizing it and then emphasizing it is worth highlighting, because part of what I hope people take away from listening to this conversation between us is empowerment with what they want to go off and do. So, right? You want to go off and do your not marketable game that could be fucking brilliant? Go do that, right?
Exactly.
And you'll find your people. Johan found me. We don't live in the same country. Do you know what I mean? We didn't know each other before this. And I could not vibe harder with this game. Legitimately,
thank you.
Right?
So one thing I want to say is, if we're talking about my private play group, like the people I play with for fun, I trust them 1000%. We know each other politically. We know each other trigger-wise. This is also why I didn't really think about it that much, because ultimately I was designing for that table, right? I know that when I enter into play with them, I will not encounter the things that would be harmful to me, because they know me and I know them. And that situation, when I started thinking about making it a published game instead of just a 2-year brain fart, after 2 years I started developing it for release, right? So that's why I say a 2-year.
That's incredible.
But
nice.
So that's when external safety tools started coming in. That's when I started thinking about how would this work at a convention when I don't know my players.
Sure.
That's really where the need for it arose. But at that point, all the core systems were already in place. That's the process that was happening. Yeah.
I'd love to use that as a bridge into some other questions. I am going to want to come back to, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but expressionist game design a little bit later. But the, I mean, it feels fitting here. I feel like I can't not talk about that, and I'm also deeply interested myself. I love the work of J Dragon. I found the Expressionist Game Manifesto very interesting, and I recently got to play Triangle Agency. I've also been playing a lot of what could be considered anti-capitalist and or anti-fascist games, a lot of which are interrogating questions of authority in a lot of different ways, which lends itself to considerations of the Expressionist Game Manifesto, which is arguably inherently derived from, let's say, that broad ideological area, right? But before we get into all that, I would love to go back to what you mentioned briefly here with convention play. And I'd like to tie that into something else about the move, well, about some other structural moves you're making. So, if I'm remembering correctly, the text itself says that a typical runtime for a session of this game is estimated to be somewhere around 2 to 3 hours. Now, one question that I have with regard to that is the game does formally allow for 3 to 8 players. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how the 3 to 8 players impacts the 2 to 3 hours.
For sure.
And under what circumstances it potentially goes more than 3 hours, especially as somebody who is going to be running. I think I'm going to get to run like 4 maybe at one point, but I'm going to be running 8, and I'm going to be running like it's going to be a lot. So what's a realistic time there without rushing people and all that, based on what and how, and then also for prep purposes, right? Because I'm deep in prep on my side. I'm about to run our session 0 for folks watching this who want to pick it up and play. You mentioned convention play. How does one play a session of this in a convention environment?
That's a great question, and I'm actually working on solving that. So I have a semi-good answer for that. It's if you play at a convention, you have, let's say, 3 hours. It's possible to do basically 1 day in the lives of your characters. That's kind of what you can do. In 1 day in this game, many of the mechanics that are really core of the campaign play will never come into play. So there's a bunch of stuff that you're excluding from your experience if you play it that way. If you do a one-shot of this game, it will not be the full experience. And I think the way I've done it, because I have played it at conventions, is that I explain the limitations of the format. And I'm like, okay, at the end I have like a debrief. So what you didn't get it to experience right now is how this would have happened in session 2 or 3. And this would have probably happened as this would have happened. The way that this engine kind of changes the game over time. Because it allows you to try out the core gameplay loop, but it doesn't really allow you to play the game. That's a weird dichotomy, because usually the core gameplay loop is the play of the game, which I know that it might sound like abstract, but it is really a roguelike experience. It is, for anyone listening who doesn't know what a roguelike is, it's a computer game genre where you basically play in a world and you make a run and you see how far you can get until you die, and then something in the world shifts or your understanding of the world shifts so you can get further the next run. It's often randomly generated so that the level design is completely different each time you enter into the same level, but you still get to understand new things about the way that the world works, so you can explore it more in the coming runs. So basically Oceania 2084 does that, but in a role-playing experience, which is hard for people to grok in a one-shot. It's impossible, because you do a one-shot, it's one life, you don't get to see those dynamics play out, right?
So well, sorry, you have more to share, and then I have a question about what you just talking about. But go ahead.
I think you had one more question, and I forgot it. That's what I wanted to say. Okay.
Oh, don't worry. Let me focus in on this because I do a lot of one shots for charity, right? In the actual play space, and that is, for example, where I played Misspent Youth. I played single sessions, not with the same. A couple of them recently to raise money for Doctors Without Borders with a focus on Palestinian aid, working with Streamers Without Borders and Just the Human in this group called Charity ttrpg. For a different channel, not the channel that we're on right now. I was with a channel called Many Faced Plays and another one called Queers and Spears that were collaborating on this. Some of the same players, actually, who are going to be at the table for this campaign, though, were in one or both of those sessions. I say one or both because a couple of them were in both, but everybody else was different in those sessions. We played for like 4 hours. I don't know how familiar you are with Misspent Youth, but it has a strict 7-scene structure. So similar to the core loop here of 6 phases, similar to what some PBTAs have with their phase structure, when they're structured like Girl by Moonlight is, or that sort of thing. Similar also to 10 Candles, where it uses the 10 candles as you've got 10 scenes. When these things go out, you're done. When you're done, everybody dies, right? Like that's how that goes. I've run 10 Candles in a similar sort of context, so these things apply there too. In 10 Candles, I have different levers to pull on as the GM, right? So I can kind of speed some of that stuff up by calling for more rolls and doing that sort of thing. In Misspent Youth, I don't, because in Misspent Youth, we enter a struggle in each scene, and then I never roll as the authority. They roll on a table that looks like hopscotch for the numbers 2 through 12 because it's 2d6, and then you just put stuff down, right? And if they land on my thing, they have to sell out or they lose the scene. And then if they land on one that they themselves have claimed before, they win. And if they land on one that's unclaimed, they just claim it, and I claim it without ever having to roll because the authority has an unfair advantage. It's basically how that works. In that context, we got so much role play in with like 5 people. We only got to do like 3 or 4 of the scenes. I had to hand wave a couple of the scenes in the middle and acknowledge that out loud to compress it for time. So my question to you is, in your experience, the 6 phases even, they fit comfortably with 8 people in a 3 hour time?
With 8 people, I think we're closer to 4 hours maybe. Kind of.
Makes sense.
The table size I usually play with, that I think is like what I've also estimated around, is 5 people around the table.
That's the standard, is 4 plus the GM. Exactly. There's no GM here.
Exactly.
So 5.
But there is one thing that I regret not putting in the rule book. And that is that it's completely fine to just do 2 phases and pick up wherever the heck you are for one session and keep it to 2 hours. Like, why wouldn't that be okay?
I love that. I think that's extremely cool, especially since you mentioned before that when somebody arrives 30 minutes late, you don't have to flashback. They just come in where they are. So, and it emphasizes a persistent world. So here's my question for Big Brother. Let's say we're running a session, because this is going to matter also for how I structure out what we're going to film, right? And I think it can matter for people at home potentially in a different way as well. In a home game, it's different because you'll just pick up in the 3rd phase if you're in the 3rd phase or whatever. Let's say since I have different people in different sessions, right? Let's say I run a 2-hour session and we only get through the first 3 phases with X number of people. Do I, as Big Brother, still assess based on that for interrogation, pick people up for a sleep, and then do that without doing the rest of the phases if I'm going to bring them in at the top of the next day?
No, so I would still keep the core structure of the different phases followed by the sleep phase, and then at the time when we enter sleep phase, that's where I run all the interrogations. And then if the next
100%.
session, the person who was in interrogation is not at the table playing, I'll just leave it uncommented.
Mm-hmm.
Because
love it. Beautiful. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. More my question is like, it's not going to be the same configuration of people every time. So let's say like let's say we get through 3 phases with
Mhm.
somebody who's at the table, and then the next time they're at the table, they're at the top
Yeah.
of a day. Do I essentially owe an interrogation potentially in the middle of that?
Maybe. I would probably, if I was running an actual play using that same setup, I would probably do that kind of off camera, like off just with that person, since
Sure.
it's the
Oh, I
Exactly,
could film it one-on-one
exactly.
separately.
and do
Yeah,
that.
I could pick
Like,
yeah.
meanwhile, this was happening.
But I still do the
Yeah.
bookkeeping, right? But I
Yeah.
still do the bookkeeping as Big Brother for the, even if we only get through 3 phases.
Exactly.
I bookkeep
Exactly.
those 3 phases, and then I grabbed whoever I grabbed in my
Yeah.
sleep.
So here's an
Right?
interesting point of how the point system works for the reactions. It's once you get enough points, the reactions are not adherent to the specific character that had the track that filled up. So suddenly you can start interrogating
Okay.
characters who are not committing any deviations
Oh.
whatsoever.
Oh,
But that's only
great.
when
I
you
love
have
that. Yeah,
gathered
I love
enough
that.
points.
Sure.
At 3 points, individual points for any of the resistance characters, that's when you can interrogate a specific character, driven by their own actions, so to speak. And I think it's at 10 points that you can, no, 6 points maybe, that you can start like interrogating people who are not committing those things. Like it's by guilty by association type thing.
I love that. Now, explain to everybody, even though we'll get into it later in more detail, explain to everybody watching how point accrual works per character and broadly, if that's okay, for the so that people understand what we're talking about when it comes to Big Brother.
To frame this, Big Brother, we haven't talked about that in this specific conversation, so I'm going to repeat that from the first thing. Yeah. Big Brother is playing an antagonistic role, not being the GM, but instead is basically enacting consequences to acts, playing strangers, and injecting what is called reactions into the game world. Big Brother does this through a point system that basically is collected by observing the resistance players play out their game, essentially. You're sitting on the sideline, you're observing, and as they go about their day and doing things, if they're doing things that are counted as thought crimes, as Big Brother, you get to roll a hidden die roll. It's important that they know you are rolling the die, but they are not allowed to know what the die result is. This is for you only. And you roll the die, you add some modifiers based on their trust levels, and you roll this die to see if your surveillance system picks up on what they just did, essentially. So it's, did I notice that or not? That's the question that the die roll asks. If you notice it, and it is a thought crime, you get a point. That's it. So, as you're playing Big Brother, you're basically sitting there observing, listening in, understanding the narrative that the other players are building and exploring, and keeping eyes out for specific things. There is a lot of room for interpretation here. It's not a question if it's a just system or not, because it is inherently an unjust system. Sometimes as Big Brother, you're in the situation of going did that person just do this thing? Would that count as this deviation or not? How do I rule this? And you have no one to ask. You are sitting there doing this judgment.
I love that. I love that.
So,
can I ask for clarification here that I think I know the answer to, but I want everybody to hear. So, are you doing this? You described. I think it was in the previous video. You described that with any action that one takes during a phase, right, as a resistance character, You describe it narratively first before you like see what kind of act it might relate to, right? And there's only X number of acts that you're allowed per phase, and they each have to be achieved within 10 minutes of real time in the story and that sort of thing. When you're Big Brother, do you assess this during the narrative portion, during when it's decided what the act is, or both?
Constantly? There's even a fourth wall breaking rule.
Right.
So there is a banned word that you, as Big Brother, has to decide at the beginning of the game. By spending points, you can add more banned words. These banned words are not only in character. This is everyone around the table. No one is allowed to say it. That's it. And so...
Do they know? So they know that the banned word exists. Do they know what the banned word is?
They do know.
And when I add more, when I spend points, do I tell them as well?
And you can do this narratively. You can do that through the news broadcasts or whatever way you wish. If you want to have it diegetically involved, or you can just meta say it. Doesn't matter.
I love it. Can you say more about
sure.
the morning?
So the morning news, during every morning session, all the resistance player scenes gets interrupted. It's a rule. It has to happen. There is a propaganda broadcast happening from Big Brother. And there is like a random table you can roll to get like inspiration for what that propaganda message is about this morning. And then basically it comes through the device. The device is undefined per definition, but we know which functions it holds. It works kind of like our phones. It has AR and VR layer. And that's kind of it. We don't know if it's Neuralink or if it's a physical object you hold in your hand. That's up for the players to decide. But those core functions, you can call someone, you can video chat, you can meet someone in VR, you can have AR overlays in your like periphery or like stuff like that. So this broadcast comes through the device. That's the thing. Mechanically or like intentionally as Big Brother, you usually want to include things in your broadcasts that tests the values of the resistance characters so that they have to roll value tests, meaning possibly losing face. And let's say you're doing a thing with a terrorist being executed in this broadcast, and you know that the character you're casting as the terrorist being executed is someone that they kind of peripherally know. Maybe the character that is subjected to that broadcast needs to roll a me before you roll, which is a value. Maybe they feel like, that should have been me. It shouldn't have been that person. And they failed that roll, and they connected that roll to sadness, meaning that they get a sadness outburst, meaning they have to play out that scene, they now have to include sobbing uncontrollably. For Big Brother, that's good, because then they have shown that they have allegiance to the terrorists, so you get to roll your little observation test. Yeah.
Right.
That's the tool it is.
And can you explain to everyone, I love that. Can you explain to everyone how those like values tests and that sort of thing lead to some characters and not others being interrogated?
So it's one part of it. You can do other things that leads to it, but they are a big part of it. A value test is a die roll that you do whenever anyone around the table feels like your value is being challenged. So anyone can invoke, I think you need to make a value test right now because I know your character and that thing you were just experiencing would have stung or would have been bad or would have been hard to go through for your character, right? So we're helping each other around the table to facilitate that. And the values are connected to emotions. Emotions is the numerical score, which you have to roll over or under with a d6. If it's over or under is defined by if you think the value in question is good or bad. So it's like a little weird mix of lasers and feelings and some kind of I don't even have a good equivalent for the value system itself, the values. They are I haven't taken that design from anywhere. That's just part of this original design, so to speak. So you roll, you see, did I manage to reach my goal or not? If I fail to reach my goal, I can either take stress or an outburst. Outbursts change the way your character behaves in the scene. Stress means you're introducing risk of complications to future acts, essentially.
I love that. Can you talk a little bit before we move off for now, the accrual of points in this manner, how table size interacts with it? Because my understanding is there's a bit of design level commentary on essentially communitarianism, like us being stronger together. That if I've read it correctly, Big Brother has less opportunity to accrue per person in a given session when the table size is larger. When the table size is smaller and people are more isolated, then there is more accrual that can happen. Am I right in understanding that correctly?
Numerically,
please correct me.
It scales. The limitation comes from your ability to consume everything that's happening around the table, and your capacity to process what the heck is happening. And sometimes the reason I've capped at 8 players around the table is because after 8 players, it becomes unwieldy for Big Brother on a purely social level, because you are keeping track of a bunch of stuff all the time, and after 8 you start missing more and more things, details.
Sure.
Someone said something with a specific tone, for example, that could be a thought crime, but you have to be with in doing that, right? Yeah. And
that's fair.
So
yeah, 100%. I'm just going to be rolling all the time behind the screen. Just constantly, they're going to keep watching me, be like, "Why you got to roll again, Danny?" I'm like, "I'm not going to tell you."
Exactly.
Like, you don't know. You don't know how to roll it.
So.
Great. Okay, so even when I'm running 8 people, because one thing that I've been trying to understand is, like, let's say I'm running 8 people and I want to try to spend one of these things that costs 10, right? Like, am I able to accrue enough to do that in that situation? Or like what sort of capping is that how does it, can you describe in more detail? Because I might be missing, like, how does it function exactly? So that in a situation where I have a ton of people there, I'm still able to accrue enough to do a lot of stuff.
Here's the thing. If you read the reactions list for Big Brother closely, you'll notice that each tier of reactions does slightly different things. So they are almost like thematized. They have themes to them in what they do. So the most expensive ones are not necessarily the things that brings about the most death. It's the thing that brings about the most uncertainty and infighting. Yeah. So
that's why I want to spend them, Johan. You know what I mean? Like, that's why, because they bring about the most uncertainty.
Exactly.
That's the fun of it.
You can either play the long game, save up a lot of points, and make sure that in the coming sessions, they will make a lot more mistakes. Yeah,
because
exactly.
it carries over
Exactly.
session to session, to be clear, right? Like it accrues.
No.
It doesn't reset for Big Brother.
Yeah.
Big Brother just
The
always
only
accrues.
the only
Until
way
they spend,
to diminish
right?
the
But, like,
amount
yeah.
of points for Big Brother is there is actually a class act for one of the classes that can affect this, but it's a very specific class act, and it's by spending it on reactions. So there's also
What's the class act?
I think it's
Curiosity.
the party official that can lower suspicion. So basically going in as like a thought police
Right,
agent registry and just like bring down someone's suspicion level.
Yeah. And party official, remind me, in austere is the same as conglomerate, like a conglomerate bureaucrat.
Yeah.
It's the top tier.
Conglomerate
right, of
officer.
The three, the one with the highest trust. Yeah.
Official.
That's
I mean,
perfect.
official is the name.
Yeah, a conglomerate officer. That's right. Conglomerate.
Yeah.
Official.
And
copy. Yeah.
I would say that the harshest level of reactions for Big Brother is the reactions that cost 3. That's where you have death. That's where you have bringing in interrogation. That's where you have removing trusted characters, right? It's the harshest on a materialistic scale.
Right.
Those are all the reactions that cost 3 are individualized. So each resistance character on the Big Brother sheet has an individual track of suspicion points. To use 1, 2, and 3 level reactions, you have to use that reaction for the person whom you're spending points from. Anything above that are more these social engineering reactions, you can take points from anyone and apply that reaction to anyone else or that character. So they're more movable in a sense, they're more free. But they are... Yeah.
Nice. And it creates a snowball, right? Because since it accrues over the course of the campaign, Big Brother becomes more and more dangerous over the course of a campaign. It's sort of similar in a sense to the 10 candles, diminishing of candles, how it moves dice pool over so that the players have smaller pool of dice, and then the GM in that game has a bigger and bigger pool of dice that can also be spent to take narrative control away. Because to your point, what is freedom if not agency? What are we competing for here if not narrative control in this game? So it's really that sounds really interesting to me, and also gives a very different quality to that note you mentioned in the last video of spending the first session or two not doing anything, just letting slice of life play out, because you're not doing anything with those moves, but you're accruing the entire time, right? And that is especially when the players know that's what's happening above table, that creates paranoia at the level of design in a way that is delicious. It reminds me a little bit, there's a bit of a trad game, but Daggerheart, right, has its hope and fear mechanics. And I can tell you, whenever I'm accruing a lot of fear and I'm just sitting on it, people are afraid. They're like, no, but what are you going to do with it? Is the thing. I don't know. It's driving me.
So one thing I was thinking about, there is like the flip side to this. So it might sound at face value like there is no risk involved for Big Brother. That's not true. So the risk is, the longer you sit on your points and accrue them and collect them and build your pile of resources to become the big bad monster, right? The more chances the resistance players have to expand their social circle. Every scene invites the possibility for them to introduce a new stranger into the scene and befriend them. If they befriend them, they become a trusted character, meaning an extra life. So there is like a race to the end here, to some extent. The only player that has a clear winning condition is Big Brother, though. The clear winning condition for Big Brother is when every single trusted character plus the resistance characters are dead. I've never experienced that happening. I can say that much. It's not meant to happen. It is an achievable goal, but it's not meant to happen.
Yeah. Sure. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure, especially with 14 players in my campaign, it's not gonna happen. But what I will say is, I thought I saw something. Maybe I misunderstood it, about also a campaign potentially ending when every player has been vaporized once, and then once over again. So essentially, like double the number of can be like a demarcator for the campaign. So I'm in trying to approach this as much rules as written as possible. And I can't control this in a like, I can't put my thumb in the scale. It's not how the game is run. But I am looking out for, I do recognize I'm supposed to vaporize 28 people in these sessions. Then. And I'm going to be acting accordingly, right, essentially. Which does mean fairly aggressive play from the perspective of the Big Brother chair. It's a lot to get at in 10 nights, right? Even if we end up slicing it out, because I say 10 nights, but you who are watching this, it might be 10 episodes you see. It might be up to like 16 or 17 episodes, depending on how we do this, somewhere in there. I still got to get through a lot of bodies, like a lot of people, a lot of real human people. Got to be interrogated and vaporized, or otherwise, like, you know. And just to be clear, that number, does that include when one is able to utilize like Big Brother is able to utilize points, if I recall correctly, to vaporize a trusted character off screen?
Just by pure game mechanics. Since if you, as a resistance player, run out of trusted characters and your current character dies, you have no one to shift to. You're out of the game. It is a hard fail.
Which I thought was a brilliant choice too. I love that because it makes it so consequential. Again, you've talked a lot about, we've together talked a lot about like the importance of agency in gaming as an art form, and in this game specifically. Consequence though too, right? Like in collaboration with agency, to make agency have stakes, have teeth, give it story, give it purpose, give it meaning. I love that decision that like this person doesn't get to pick up another character after that, right? Because also if you're antisocial in your play, if you're not building out your social circles, you're not I mean, this is not a resource renewal thing because these are people, but at a game mechanics level, like instrumentalizing a little bit, it is a resource of extra lives. So if you don't have that, and I think not to belabor anything or to take something artful and make it too candid by speaking it, overtly, but at a game design level, I love that it reflects the reality of lived experience, where it's about community survival rather than about individual survival. And if you don't have a community, then the parts of you that were left in the people who meant something to you cannot exist, because nobody who's left who meant anything to you or to whom you meant anything. Right?
Thank you.
I think that's elegant as hell, honestly. I think that's really cool. And impactful.
One thing I have to say in
game design
when we're
for
talking
like
about player death and these lives, the community, etc. I think one of the thematically heaviest things that is part of the design of the oppression of this game, which I was actually kind of hesitant before I actually decided on putting it in there, is that essentially if someone has died through vaporization, the community is robbed of grievance. They can't grieve this character. They can't mention their name. Yeah, exactly. So
Because that's a thought crime. Because it's a thought crime.
I'm 100% sure. You'll notice that people at your table will do this, though. And I think that is one of the most beautiful aspects of having put that in there, because it becomes a defiance that is extremely human. Like, we need this. This is the thing that makes us have any value, and we have to do this, even if that's a risk. And I think I really I've had sessions playing with my friends where that has been campaign defining things, where that's really where it comes out, the impact of this. And I think without trying to toot my own horn, that's I'm so happy that I actually kept that part of the design, because like I said, I was worried about how that would land with the experience of playing that. Yeah.
I will say, you talk about how that's one of the most essential human things. I think about Antigone, right? I think about how one of our oldest surviving pieces of dramatic work is specifically about what you're talking about, is about standing up to authoritarian power and saying, no, I'm going to grieve the person who cared for me. No, I don't care that they turned against the state, specifically as a reason why I'm not supposed to be able to grieve them. No, I don't care that you're going to put me to death for doing that. I'm going to grieve them. That's how powerful it is, that thousands of years later, that story still resonates. I used to teach arts education, theater arts mostly, to kids 8 to 18. And when I was much, much younger, I was very close to them in age. It was my late teens to early 20s. And I remember taking Antigone to a school that I was working in the Bronx, because I was living in New York at the time. And the degree to which these kids that had no direct cultural relationship to thousands-year-old Greek drama connected with it instantaneously has stayed with me for the better part of 2 decades since then. It's incredible, the degree to which. So I'm glad. Thank you for keeping that in the game. I know it sounds like it was a difficult decision in the sense that I understand the impulse to want to take care with that. It's so important for this to be an honest exploration, which it is. And seriously, I want to emphasize again to the audience: pick this fucking game up, right? It is an incredibly honest artistic expression. This game, an invitation to be honest and kind at the table, because you were willing to take risks like that. So thank you for that. I'm really grateful for it. I do think that's a pretty good segue into expressionist gaming. And for folks who are not familiar watching this with expressionist games, they're as defined by the self-described expressionist game manifesto that Jay Dragon wrote. Expressionist games are negotiated experiences shaped by unresolvable tension between mechanically imposed external worlds and passionate, inarticulate internal worlds. That is how she defined it. Do you believe that Oceania 2084, I believe you, if I'm recalling correctly, all of the development of this was before the manifesto came out? Wouldn't have been something you were thinking of consciously in that context?
Yes.
In retrospect.
Very much so.
Do you believe that this is
when that manifesto came out, it was like reading a lot of my own thoughts. Not my own words, because it was written by Jay Dragon. I don't write the same way. But it's all the same types of ideas that's been floating around. I was so psyched. I had to write a little thank you piece on my blog about that. Because it puts so much into perspective. Oh yeah, this is what I've been trying to do. That really resonated with me on a really deep creative level, because there are things that I do in Oceania that kind of contradicts what the manifesto kind of dictates, that this is what it is. One of the things is that the inner lives of the characters cannot be dictated by rules. I do that a lot. So the inner lives of any resistance character is run by regulated values and emotions, and so it's not only up to the player to portray that or imagine that. But I argue in my own mind that it's just a flavor of an expressionistic game, because it gives you the paintbrush to explore those inner lives rather than harshly defining them. You're still in control of those expressions, right? So, yeah.
The player still has the agency, right? So you're not trying to prescribe this is how you feel. There's another game that that does something similarly interesting that I just recently did a big multi-channel collaboration to explore during open playtesting called Rocket Club. A friend of mine named M. Hubbard wrote it. It's a sort of PBTA game, but it's not 2d6 at the center. It's 3d6, and they're separate d6s to track. One is for outcome, one is for side effect, one is for mood. Right?
So you have different colors, basically.
Different colors, yeah. And the part of the interesting thing is I, as the guide in that game, dictate the outcome, like what happens in relation to the outcome narratively. But with the exception of like when they ask me questions for some of the results in side effect, players determine how all the side effects, including and especially the negative ones, are manifested narratively, and everything about their mood. And there's other subsystem stuff with the mood that's not worth getting into now that's great, but just not to the point that I'm driving at. But that is also something that you could say, like, enforcing mechanics on the internal world of a character. But like you said here, right, which is why I want to draw a parallel between the two, I would challenge that and say it's more about giving the characters tools through which they can do that. Because the mood role isn't telling them how they're feeling fear. It's telling them that they're feeling fear. And a person does not choose to feel fear. That's not a thing that happens, right? At a conscious level. So how is it happening to you and what are you doing about it are still in your hands. And I feel like it's going to be, again, I will know more once we get this on its feet, but I feel like it's going to be the same thing in Oceania, right? For the players when they're dealing with the parts of the game design that deal with their internal lives. But then there is also the internal lives of the players above the internal lives of the player characters, above the external lives of the player characters, that in this Matryoshka doll of experience, right, is still interestingly at play. So the last thing I want to ask about that for the moment is, do you have a particular interest now that you've seen the manifesto and can look at your own work, this work in particular, through that lens or with that in mind? Do you have any advice for people playing the game as written, rules as written still, to deliberately play with the puppy cage that Jay talks about, right? Like if the puppy cage is the rules, where do you think the juice is for people to rattle the cage, to push against not just push against in fiction, but push against the rules? You know?
So I love that question. So we can't talk about that without talking about the negative space. So I think we need to go there. What I mean by negative space is this: the possibility space for agency for the resistance characters is defined by a lack of rules. This means that they, and now I'm saying the players, through the filter of their current character, can be how inventive they want, can be how grand scale they want, they can literally take on all the thought police agents in the whole world if they wish. If they can make believable 10-minute steps towards enacting that fiction, completely viable. It pushes extremely much against rules as written, because the rules as written define that you have a morning phase, you have a working phase, you have a lunch phase, you have a working phase, you have an evening phase, you have a sleep phase.
Right.
One intended such rule bending thing is there is no written rule in the whole rules system that defines what you have to do during work. You don't even have to show up to work.
I love that.
You don't have to be at home during sleep. All of those things are implied, but never a rule. So as you get players more and more used to thinking in this system, and more questioning, and more willing to push against, they will start experimenting with which of these rules is it possible to break without breaking the rules of the game. And you'll see breakout attempts in this system. Like one of the jury members I met in Italy recently relayed a story from their campaign. They played for, was it 15 sessions, I think? They relayed like this grand scale epic resistance movement build up thing where their character that they like had played for several sessions in a row without ever getting into an interrogation, basically almost like suicide bombed, kind of went into one of the ministries to just take out the leadership, and of course managed to do so because you don't have a skill check. Of course,
they just say it happens and it happens. Yeah.
Of course, they died as a result of it, but it was very worth it, and it was a long planning build-up with small cogs of cleverly used mechanics for the resistance players to get to the point where that's a possibility, because you're still limited by this 10-minute limitation, and you're still limited by what. Okay, so to break that down, to be like, what do you have to do in this game to do that type of thing? Well, to start with, you have to invent the areas, the places that you need to be there in order to be able to get all the materials you need, to meet all the people you need along the way, befriend the right people so you can use them as your own pawns. If we're looking at it from a game like logic perspective, you have to do so much careful, like it's like a heist game at that point. You're building all the heist parts to get to that point, and then you have your epic grand exit where your character just dies, right?
That's very fun. And my question for the epic grand exit is, let's say you're doing it in a phase where you have 6 acts, but those acts have to be in 10 minutes each. So do you spend any of your economy getting to that place? Like, how do you do it? Like in action, right? Because like if you're there, what about the travel time over there? Might be a question that comes up at the table, right? Or what about the time it takes to get up the building to the floor they're at? What about moving around the building? You can just say things work, so you don't have to worry about do I find them or not, because you find them. But you have to make a believable construction, like you were saying, a ladder that gets you there. More broadly, but then also I want to say what I want to ask more about is at the micro level, right? Yeah. Like let's say somebody's doing that during work or during leisure, right? How does one do that?
Exactly.
What would it look like?
So there's a bunch of stuff happening in the system around this. One thing is that there are rules for how to disconnect your device. If you do that, you are committing a treasonous thought crime, which could technically be extremely dangerous. It's a gamble. It doesn't have to be extremely dangerous. Maybe you can plan it out. Maybe you can figure out a way to do this in a way that's less dangerous than it was if you would have done it in this other way. I've intentionally made loopholes in the regulatory system that you as a player can figure out after a while of playing and thinking, so that it's possible to get fairly securely through these preparatory steps, right? So the other thing is your resources as a resistance player is dependent on like the credit system thing. So if you are a pro, you have certain types of produce that you are granted. You just have them if you want them. You can describe how in my apartment I have this thing because it's in the list of things that a character of my level would be. If you're above that level, you have everything below your current level, etc. So it's also about cleverly using and redistributing resources that characters have access to. So if, let's say you would play a conglomerate official, I'm playing a pro. I have an easier time doing certain things than you have. I also have less surveillance on me. Because you're closer to the heart of society, you have more surveillance. But you have access to more stuff. Meaning, you could probably give me the things I need to do things. But that in itself needs a plan for how do we get your stuff into my hands. And so, if we're breaking it down into the micro level, it's like, it might sound boring said like this, but it's a lot about logistics.
But isn't that, but here's what I love about that, Johan. That's what actual community organizing is like. That's what actual change in real life is. It's a lot of boring things you do in a row that incrementally address some problems imperfectly. Yeah. And like you try. You just keep trying.
It's exactly that. So I've said it in my master thesis around the production of this game that like every rule in this whole game, to some extent, is autobiographical. I couldn't have made this game if I wasn't a community organizer. I couldn't have made this if I wasn't a real world attempting to be resistance fighter. That would have been impossible, because I wouldn't have had the building stones to understand how these things work if you're not doing that work, right? I think that's important here. People have asked me in the past, like, where do you differ from George Orwell? Like, how does your thing, your messaging basically differ? Well, he was doing his own things. I do my own things. I brought myself into this thing. There is no, I can't make Orwell's book. I can make my book, but I can look through his lens at those things, and I can use it in a recreatable way to frame it in a way. But yeah, that's why I say it's like an anarchist game, an anti-authoritarian game, because it comes from that lived experience. Of course, when I'm saying this, let me be humble about it. It is no way near as horrible in Sweden as anywhere else or in this game, right? So
yeah. But it is a universal human experience, right? It is. The push against this oppression, against authoritarianism, also the yearning for it, right? Yep. I was watching a video about a LARP in the UK, I want to say, that was done educationally to help students, teenage students, better understand not the dangers of authoritarianism. They have lots of other ways to do that. Better understand how easy it is for so many of their compatriots to fall under the seduction of authoritarian, like, and here it was like targeting specifically like the manosphere, misogynistic messaging, a lot of stuff that's targeting these age groups very aggressively right now. And it sounded heavy. It sounded very effective, right? Like from what I was able to glean at a distance there. And it's part of what I hope people will get from seeing your art in this book, our art in collaboration with your art, in the actual play that we put together. And hopefully when they pick it up for themselves and play and make their own art at home with their own communities, right? Because I think that that's so important. All of that, I think, gives me real hope, because this is what, and you said you hope to be a resistance fighter. I do count myself in the camp. I don't pretend that making art is the same as like getting somebody out of a dangerous situation physically, or like giving them food or anything. But I will say it is its own important thing. And I do think we're all here on this planet, like able to do the things that we're able to do. Yeah. And for like, meaning like not everybody needs to do everything, and not everybody needs to be good at everything, because we live in community, right? Yeah. And it's kind of egotism, I've found, to land on the idea of like, no, but I have to do everything for everyone all the time, because I have to be the one who can do it all. Yeah, right? So I feel like for those of us with a passion for stories and for artistry and for games, this is a valid and valuable way to contribute to exactly what we're talking about. For sure. So thank you for contributing that, and giving us all the opportunity to engage with it. I think that's a good break for this part. Come join us, everybody, for the next part, whenever you can, and we'll catch you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.